Hey everyone, welcome to MTF Story. Today I am going to share with you Brother Will Be My Sister Part 6, written by Jennifer. I was woken by a gentle shove. As I opened my eyes, I gave a contented little murmur as I stretched my sleepy limbs and saw the face of Susan looking at me with a smile on her face. "Morning, Lucy," she said. "Time to get up. All ready for your day as a little girl?" "Sure am," I said with a grin. "What time is it?" "Our 6 o'clock," she replied. "But I want you to be showered and dressed before the others are up. We don't want them seeing you going to the bathroom with your hair like that, do we?" "My hair?" "Of course. That would ruin everything." I put my hand to my head as she grinned and said, "Exactly. Now let's go to the bathroom together. I'll keep watch while you have a shower, and then I'll get you dressed before I get myself ready. Once you're dressed, we can relax." I saw her point and quickly jumped out of the bed and went down the passage with her. I made a swift detour into the toilet, and soon afterwards was taking a refreshing shower. After Susan had dried me down, we went back to our room and she set about dressing me. We both knew that Wendy wanted to dress me for Jennifer's party, but Susan intended to take charge of that little chore, as she didn't want Wendy to be the one to tie ribbons in my hair. My wig was an excellent one, but at such close proximity we couldn't risk her realizing that I was in fact wearing a wig. The pink party frock that I liked so much was already hanging on the wardrobe door in readiness. Susan dressed me in similar fashion to the day before, except this time I wore pink satin knickers with small bows of pink ribbon and a white vest, as befits very small girls. I gave a sigh of pleasure as Susan took the frock down off its hanger and, pulling it on over my head, fastened the buttons down the back and tied the sash belt in a neat bow behind me. Then she pulled a pair of white cotton ankle socks with frills around the ankle and buckled a childish pair of red leather sandals on my feet. Sitting me down in front of the mirror, she carefully placed the wig on my head, and after securing it on with spirit gum, she took 2 lengths of pink satin hair ribbon and tied each one in a neat bow on either side of my head. She finished off the effect with 2 white plastic hair slides to set them off. Standing me up in front of the full-length mirror, she stood behind me and put her hands on my shoulders. We both looked at the image of the little girl in the mirror and beamed with pleasure. "Oh, Lucy," she smiled, "you look lovely. I never thought I had such a pretty brother. You look absolutely perfect." I had to agree and could hardly believe that the dainty little figure in the mirror was me. Susan examined me closely and smiled as she said, "Yes, very nice. I must say, Lucy, you really do make a very sweet little girl. Now you just stay here while I get myself washed and dressed." I sat down obediently in front of the small portable television in the room and watched the early morning program, while my sister went to the bathroom before returning to dress herself in a cream-colored blouse with a tan suede waistcoat and a brown corduroy skirt. She brushed her long hair back in a ponytail and tied it behind her head with a bow of red tartan hair ribbon. She completed the ensemble with a pair of knee-high tan leather boots and looked very smart. Only the horse was missing, I thought. By this time the house was stirring, and as we sat there waiting for everyone else to get up, we could hear a succession of people using the bathroom. Finally, Susan decided that it was time to go downstairs, and giving me a final check-over, she nodded, smiled, and led the way downstairs. We heard the sound of human activity in the kitchen and went in to find Wendy preparing breakfast. She turned to look at us and said, "Well, it's nice to see such early birds. I thought I was the only one in this household. Oh, Lucy, you look absolutely gorgeous. You certainly know how to look nice, don't you? That pink dress suits you to perfection, and the matching hair ribbons and red shoes look so nice. I think I'll have to do some arm twisting and see if I can get Michaela into something equally pretty. I'm certainly not going to have her going to the party in trousers, and that's final. Especially with you looking like that." I sensed trouble, but realized by her expression that she meant it. Mick wasn't going to be happy about that idea. The 3 of us sat round the kitchen table to eat our breakfast, and the girls gradually joined us, bleary-eyed and one by one. They were obviously used to going to bed late and getting up late. "So what's the program for today?" said Wendy. "You'll need to get a few things in for tonight, won't you?" "Yes," said Carol. "We'll pop down to the shops this morning and get what we need. The others will arrive about 7 or 8 tonight, I should think. What are you doing about Jennifer's party?" "Well, I was going to drive Mick and Lucy over there just after lunch, but with the car being repaired, I'll walk them over there, and then I've got to go on to the hairdressers. Jillian Parker's mother says she'll drive them home afterwards, so they'll be quite safe. When they get home, they can party with you for a while, but I want them in bed by 10 o'clock. Okay? Yes, sure, Mum, said Carol, pleased that the two youngest would be out of the way by the time the party really got going. We finished our breakfast and helped do the washing up before the three older girls left to do their shopping in preparation for the party. It was a warm, sunny morning, but rather than go out, Michaela and I decided to stay in before going to Jennifer's party. We went and sat in the garden, and she told me about her prowess as a footballer. It seemed to be the only thing she was interested in, and she proudly showed me her collection of football memorabilia. I did my best to pretend I was interested, but it wasn't easy. The only thing we had in common seemed to be her wish to be a boy and my wish to be a girl. I was again tempted to broach the subject, but thought it best not to until I'd discussed it with Susan. The morning passed pleasantly enough, and eventually the girls arrived back from their shopping expedition. Wendy came out into the garden and said, "Come on, Mick, time to get you ready for the party. I've laid something out for you in your room." Wendy disappeared with Michaela to get her ready, and barely a few seconds later, a faint bellow of rage could be heard coming from upstairs. Mick was obviously putting up a fight. I felt worried, but Carol looked at me and grinned. "Don't worry, Lucy," she said. "She always kicks up a fuss when we put her in a dress, but when Mum decides on what she wears, Mick doesn't stand a chance. It's usually a mixture of threats and blackmail, but she'll do as she's told. She always does in the end." I was curious to see what her outfit was going to be. Surely it wasn't going to be a party dress. But it was. After a short while, the two of them reappeared, with a subdued Michaela wearing a white satin party frock almost identical to mine. She wore white ankle socks and a pair of white leather sandals on her feet, but with her short hair, she looked like a boy wearing a dress. Carol looked at Michaela and grinned. "Well, my goodness," she said. "Looks like I've got a younger sister after all, although with your hair like that, I'm not so sure. You still look like a boy even if you are wearing a dress." Michaela looked daggers at her, and she certainly didn't appreciate Carol's sense of humor. I couldn't help sympathizing as she blushed to the roots with embarrassment. "I tried to tie a couple of bows in her hair," sighed Wendy, "but they kept falling out. I'm afraid her hair's just too short." "Oh, well, never mind. At least she's wearing a dress to match Lucy's. That's something." Michaela gave a snort of disgust and walked out into the garden. I decided not to follow, as I felt that she wanted to be left alone with her anger, so I stayed indoors with the others. Wendy began to prepare lunch, but suggested that Michaela and I should only have a light snack, so as not to spoil our appetites for Jennifer Mottram's party. Lunch over, Wendy decided it was time to be off, and with the warm sun shining out of a clear blue sky, she suggested that coats would be unnecessary. The girls said goodbye, and Wendy accompanied Michaela and me to the front door. She opened it, and we stepped out into the bright sunshine and set off down the street towards Jennifer's home. After only a few minutes, I had an uneasy feeling, as I felt that several passers-by were looking at me and grinning. For a moment, I thought that perhaps my wig had slipped, betraying my true identity as a boy. Then I realized that the object of their attention and amusement wasn't me. It was Michaela, and I suddenly realized that they were under the impression that she was in fact a boy dressed as a girl. Michaela looked at me and hissed, "This is all your fault. You just had to insist on wearing a childish little party frock, didn't you? Thanks to you, Mum's made me wear one as well, and I feel like a complete idiot. If anyone I know is at the party, it's goodbye to my street cred forever. Just look at the way those people are laughing at me." Wendy heard her comments and said sharply, "We'll have none of that, Michaela. You insist on having your hair cut short so you can suffer the consequences. You're the one who wants to look like a boy, so it serves you right, and I don't want to hear another word about it. And one other thing. I know you insist on being called Mick at home, but while you are at the party, you'll answer to your proper name of Michaela. Is that understood?" Michaela gave a huff of resignation, shrugged her shoulders, and said, "Oh, all right, but only while we're at the party." "Very well. Now come along, we're nearly there." Michaela looked grimly ahead as if wishing for this nightmare to end as soon as possible. A few minutes later, we arrived at a large house set back from the street and walked up the drive to the front door. Wendy rang the bell, and a moment later, the door was opened by a pleasant-looking woman who smiled at us and said, "Oh, hello, Wendy. Do come in." Just go on through into the garden. We walked through the dining room and out through some French windows onto a patio on which some garden seats and furniture had been arranged. I looked at the scene and heard Michaela visibly groan at the scene before us. Not surprising, really. It was the very essence of what she'd been dreading. In front of us on the lawn were about a dozen girls of our age, all dressed in their best party frocks. From time to time, they darted about with shrill squeals, while some of the younger ones were discussing the finer points of the dolls they were holding. The mothers stood around, chatting and beaming at the little girls at play, and Michaela groaned again. "And who's this little girl?" smiled the woman, looking at me. "I'm Barbara Mottram, Jennifer's mother. What's your name?" "Lucy," I said politely. "Lucy Proctor." "Lucy's spending the weekend with us," said Wendy. "I hope it was all right to bring her." "Of course it was," smiled Barbara. "My goodness, Lucy, that is a pretty dress, isn't it?" Turning to Michaela, she said, "And it goes nicely with your dress, doesn't it, Michaela? Why don't you take her over to Jennifer and introduce her?" "Right," said Michaela, and taking my hand, she led me over to where a group of girls were talking together. As we approached them, a tall girl wearing a pale blue dress with plaits hanging down her back looked at us and said, "Oh, hi, Mick. Glad you made it." "Goodness, I hardly recognized you wearing that dress." "How come?" "I don't even start me," retorted Michaela. "This is Lucy, who's staying with us." "Lucy, this is Jennifer. And this is Trudy, Hillary, Jillian, Anne, and Rosemary." The girls acknowledged me, and Jennifer persisted with her questioning. "So how come they managed to get you into a dress?" she said. "It's not like you at all, especially something as childish as that. You look about 6 years old." "Ha ha, very funny," said Michaela. "Well, when Mum saw what Lucy was wearing, she insisted on me wearing something similar. I feel a right twit." "Yes, well, knowing what you usually wear, I'm not surprised," said Jillian with a grin. "You must be really hating this." "You can say that again," said Michaela with feeling. The other girls couldn't help grinning, as it seemed they were familiar with Michaela's preference for being treated as a boy. They didn't continue with their mild teasing of her, though, and with her normal reputation for being a tomboy, I suspected they were all a little afraid of her. After a few minutes, they changed the subject and began discussing the latest girls' gossip. With my own experience of mixing with the girls at home, I had no difficulty in joining in the conversation, and suddenly felt elated when I realized that every one of them accepted me as being a little girl. I was in seventh heaven. Wendy suddenly walked over to us to say that she was going on to the hairdresser's, and that we were not to forget that Jillian Parker's mother was going to drive us home later. She said goodbye and left us to enjoy the party. A buffet spread of everything that any child could possibly want to eat had been set up on the patio, and when the table was laid, Jennifer's mother told us to help ourselves. It was a wonderful spread, and instinctively I nearly grabbed a plate in boyish fashion, ready to cram some goodies into my mouth. That would have probably raised a few eyebrows. But fortunately, I suddenly remembered everything that my sister had told me, and sat on a chair with my food on a plate, nibbling at everything as daintily as I could. I was the very picture of an innocent little girl of 8. Once we'd eaten our fill, there was little wish to play any boisterous party games, so we settled down to watch one of Jennifer's latest videos while our food went down. As the video came to an end, Jillian's mother came over to Michaela and myself and said, "All right, girls, we're going now. I'm giving you a lift home, so come along." We stood up with Jillian and thanked Jennifer and her mother for her hospitality. "You're very welcome," smiled Mrs. Mottram. "It's been nice meeting you, Lucy, and I hope we see you again sometime." We went out to the car, and were soon on our way back to Michaels's home. The car stopped outside the house, and thanking Mrs. Mottram for the lift, we said goodbye to her and Jillian and went into the house. By now, the preparations for the girls' party were in full swing, and we were immediately roped in to help. But before she would do anything, Michaela dashed up to her room and reappeared a few minutes later wearing her customary shirt and slacks. At least it wouldn't seem odd to call her Mick again. As for myself, the last thing I wanted to do was take off my pretty party dress, so I wore it for the rest of the evening. With everything more or less ready, Carol, Fiona, and Susan went upstairs to change, while Michaela and I helped her mother to finish preparing the refreshments in the kitchen. With our tummies already full of cakes and trifle, There was little danger that Michaela and I would nibble at the food as we assembled the canapes and other tasty treats. Once we'd helped lay the food out on a table in the lounge, there was nothing else for Michaela and I to do, so we settled down to watch TV. That's it for today. Hope you have enjoyed it. If you do, then be sure to subscribe for more story like this. See ya!